Hello again, TNA fam. How's it going? We are back here at the Impact Zone podcast again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans. And today I want to talk about elevating the mid-card titles and the mid-card scene. Now, I don't exactly know whether this is 100% gonna work. Obviously, it's just a thought experiment, just to go, let's think about this. How could we do this? Or what could we kind of do? What, experimentation could we kind of do? Because, they've had option C in the X division for quite a while. Now, the option C has been hotly debated whether it's good, bad, or what have you. And I still am going to debate it a little bit in this, but not too much, hopefully. But I was thinking whether that would help with the other mid-card titles, like the tag team titles. Maybe not so much because it's kind of a completely different kind of thing. And then you're kind of like, if somebody's quote-unquote cashing, you could almost do it because it's like, if they're cashing in their half of the title, that's kind of them also breaking up their tag team sort of thing. You could do that in a babyface way, obviously, still, but I think it's much more of a you do it in a heel way or what have you, that sort of thing. But obviously, I'm talking more about the international title. So I think one of those things of saying, okay, how do we elevate someone from that quote-unquote mid-card division into the next division is saying, well, what if they take a loss, at the end of their, whatever mid-card title reign? Well, that really hurts them and sets them back. Sometimes, you want to have this story kind of like what they had with Josh Alexander, where he really transitioned not really quickly, but fairly quickly from that X division to that world title picture. And there were still a lot of people going, we don't know if this guy is the guy or is a main event level guy. He was certainly a great wrestler and all of that, but they didn't know whether they could build the company around him or whether he'd draw tickets or what have you and all of that. I think that was the thing. And I think what they were trying to not gamble on, but trying to gamble on was, okay, we'll see at, this point, whether or not people are interested, at least in some point. And then when we take the title off of him, immediately he's got a main event story raring to go. And he's got 6 more or 3 more months or whatever it was, I can't remember, whatever it was, worth of another chase at the title to kind of get people back interested and invested in all of this sort of stuff. And then we go from there. And you had Moose being the great heel champion and all of that too. So, and Moose hadn't really, he'd had some great moments here and there, but still he hadn't really felt like the top guy he really should have been for a long time, and whatnot. So I feel like finally they gave Moose that, even though it was fairly short-lived in some regards, at least they gave him that fairly short run of 6 months or whatever it was at the top, just to be this guy's a beast and, he can be at that top. He can draw in this company, and whatnot. And again, he could do anything anywhere if he really wanted, I think, honestly, if people booked around him, the right way and whatnot. And again, he showed that again, nearly a year later or whatever it was, when he won the belt from Shelley, and then he lost it later on down the track. But he sort of didn't really lose it, kind of. He did lose it, but whatever. Obviously, but still, I still think, you putting that idea behind something like that is potentially good because it lets people keep their momentum, whether they're a heel or a babyface. I think surprise cash-ins are a thing that heels would do more. And I think that's more exciting and more interesting. And I think that, again, that would, it sort of gives you an automatic money in the bank kind of thing, instead of like TNA having to be like, let's have a money in the bank. Let's just make all of our titles have this quote unquote option C, which says you can cash in your title at any time. Well, not at any time, but at any time, basically, for a world title shot. Now, that would also help with the women's division in a way as well, especially if you actually introduce another mid-card women's title, which I have said for so goddamn long. I feel like that could work if they like treated it right and they worked it out right. Or an X Division, women's X Division title. Like, something like that could work. That could be, like, really good. I don't know why that hasn't really been expanded on, or a women's international title or whatever. Doesn't matter what you call it, as long as you've got something there for people to be like, okay, you know, I can be in this realm, and for 6 months or whatever it is, I'll be building my name. Because again, like, you can't really expect people to believe that on day one or on day two or whatever it is of somebody like coming into the company or whatever it is, winning a title. It's just like, no, we don't believe this. No matter what, you're here, and you know, that was like with what happened with Frankie Kazarian. He like won the belt and basically immediately cashed it in, and it was like, dude, yeah, you won against Speedball Bailey, who'd been here for a while or whatever, and you had a great match or whatever it was, but still, like, you trying to cash in with only like really one big win under your belt was like, you ain't winning this belt, bro. You're not winning that belt. You know, like, there's just no way you're winning that belt. Not with this story. You know, not with like 1 month build up or whatever it is. There was just no way that was like in that situation it was going to happen. And again, like, you've got to look at saying, well, even back then, which this was a couple of years ago now, it's like, you know, what would that have done? You know, to say build the roster at the current time, you know, it wouldn't have done anything, because like you have if you have Kazarian there as the babyface, then you've got to build up all these other heels around him, you know, and not that you can't do that, but again, it's not like you're already trying to build up all these heels around Josh Alexander, and Kazarian was like, you know, like, once you've become like second tier or mid card like that, or in some ways, whatever, you sort of fall into that problem of being like, oh, you're just mid card guy or whatever, you know, etc. And that's the problem with the fans, and that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, I think in TNA, certainly there is a bit of a difference. But I also think, like, you are what you are until the point at which they showcase or they push you into the position of you are a semi-main eventer or a main eventer or whatever. So what does that mean? That means that, like, you've got to have either pay-per-views, which is very unlikely, the top billing, or the opening billing. And you've got to have not just very, but you've got to have very good matches, at least, to some extent. And what I mean by that is investing the fans, not just doing 500 flips or whatever it is. You've got to invest people in your match, not just, yes, you're a great technical wrestler, that's great, but, and you've got all the fundamentals down, and you can do 500 snapmares or whatever fuck it is. Like, you've got to be, like, getting the people to be emotionally invested, even if, like, they've seen basically the same match 1,000 times. You've got to have, you know, because, like, everyone does this, like, at some point in a match, does the suplex out of the corner. Everyone does the Death Valley Driver, or everyone does the Power Slam, or everyone does these moves It's not just doing moves. Yes, you've got to execute moves well, and you've got to pull off a good match and all of that. But having a good match, technically, isn't investing people. You've got to have people invested in who you are, what you're about, all that stuff. The emotional journey that you're going through or whatever in that match as well. So it's about all the aspects, no matter what. If you're the heel, you've got to make people hate you. If you're the babyface, you've got to make people love you. Same thing for promos and whatnot, you know, like in the promo, you've got to get people to love you if you're the babyface. And for heel, as I said, got to make people hate you. So you've got to take that role, and you can't, like, not sugarcoat things, but suppose, like, you can't really be like, well, I'm the heel, but I'll try to be the babyface or whatever. That's just kneecapping the babyface, but also kneecapping you, because now you don't have anything to go up against, you know, type thing. Like if the heel is also the babyface, or the babyface is also the heel, what are they fighting against? Like somebody who's standing there and going, aren't I meant to be the bad guy or whatever, you know, type thing, or aren't I meant to be the good guy or whatever. And like you can have an unsympathetic babyface. People have had unsympathetic or less sympathetic baby faces for years, or people have just gotten sick of the baby faces that they were kind of stuck with, you know, like the old tried and true, you know, whatever things didn't work anymore, you know, because they weren't the person anymore, and it was time for change, you know. They were getting sick of the same old, same old. Perhaps some people say, oh, well, you should keep riding that gravy train, don't fix what isn't broke, but you know, like, again, you can't just keep doing the same thing for diminishing returns either. And that's my point here about, like, trying to elevate the mid-card titles or the mid-card feuds or the mid-carders themselves. Because you can't keep having just some person there that exists holding a belt. They need stories that either help them elevate themselves or elevate the other people that are in the division. And it's not like you need absolutely distinct, clear-cut, like, these people are in the mid-card, and these people are in the upper card, and these people are in the lower card, or whatever else it is. Effectively, if you're not in the main event, or what have you, like, in some ways, quote-unquote, you're in the mid-card, even if you're, like, the quote-unquote opening act, not the curtain jerkers or whatever you want to call it, or effectively just the jobbers. So that would be, like, your true enhancement style guys. So those would be your bottom-of-the-barrel style guys or gals or whatever, you know. But again, you've got to have those people that help other people get over. You can't have 21 or whatever main event guys. That's not how things work. You've got to have a few guys that are truly main event guys, and then you've got to have a few, or gals, whatever, and then you've got to have a few other guys that are sort of semi-main event guys, but are really there to help put other people over. That, or guys that you're like, or gals again, that you're looking to elevate into that position. So, yeah, again, like, unfortunately, that's what everyone gets kind of stuck with when you're not the main event guy, and you're not the main, like, one of the main focuses, like, or what have you. Like, even Moose, like, even now, like, I don't think he's technically a main event guy. I think he's a semi-main eventer now. So that's where he kind of falling. And I think Eddie Edwards is kind of falling out of being a semi-main eventer. He's kind of starting to slip into being more, like, I think he's part-time now, more so than just, like, he's jobbing out or he's becoming a real mid card or whatever, anything like that. And again, like he's in a faction, so it's a bit convoluted because again, like when you say is the faction all together or are they separate, it like again, like the wins and losses traditionally are usually the way that people sort of, or stories again, like whatever, are the way that people divide these metrics or whatever. But I don't really I don't really get the metrics of like who's where and what's where, because like again, like some guys and some gals or whatever can be pushed into that main event or semi-main event slot for a short period of time very easily, like Moose, like Eddie Edwards. I think you could push Macklin up into that semi-main event or main eventer spot. I think you could push Nick Nemeth into that spot. I don't think you can push the Hardys into that position, but they have done it. So, but that was like with 2 other tag teams, 3 other, whatever it has been, or several other tag teams at times that you've kind of tried to do that. And like it's weird that I didn't really see much of what they did in NXT, but I saw some stuff that they did, and it was like, what the heck? They aren't having these good of matches or these good of performances or this good of showings in TNA. What's going on here? So I don't know whether somebody said you got to pull your finger out more or something or whatever, and they did or what have you. But yeah, I don't know what happened there, or they were just feeling good that day or whatever it was. But yeah, again, I sit there and say, okay, what other ways besides the idea of like adding option C? Because like then there'd be like, as I said, that excitement or that unknown factor or whatever you of like, is somebody gonna, and you've kind of got to put some level of restrictions on it, I think, or not like I said this before of saying like, if you've got the call your shot, it's got to be based on a story. It can't just be like, I cash in now. Like, you obviously can. Moose did that. But it was like there was a story there and they decided to tell it. You know what I mean? So they've already kind of told that story. So you can't really tell that story again. So, and again, I think the babyface stories are just less interesting because it's like, I will challenge you at this point, what have you. It's not like, out of nowhere, here comes whoever, and they're cashing it in, at this opportune moment, or what have you. I think the most interesting is when that sort of, like, especially to more casual people, and that's one way you could kind of get rid of the call your shot gauntlet, because I do think that, like, it is cool to kind of see some of these returns or debuts or whatever else you kind of see there. But I don't really think the call your shot is all that, like, amazing. I think it's kind of cool in some ways, but again, I kind of think it's one of those things that, yeah, I don't know whether the whole gimmick of, like, you get a title shot, just give somebody a number 1 contendership at the next pay-per-view or some shit. Whatever. And then you've got, like, obviously, you can still do more things with the core shot, but like if you make the other titles able to be cashed in, like then you've got, I don't know whether you've got a problem per se, but you've got a problem that now you've got all these things that can be cashed in for an opportunity or for a bigger opportunity than what you've currently got. Now, I guess some of this, what I'm saying or what I'm going through is saying, some people were complaining, and I don't know who, these are probably marks or whatever, but they were complaining about Leon Slater and him being stuck where he's at. The dude has barely been in the company for a year. He's just starting to build momentum, and somewhat I do agree in some regards that he hasn't really got any really good opposition, and he hasn't got really any good stories to kind of go in and really go against. And like they're just throwing together opponents. Like, so there's like I said, there wasn't much jeopardy. Like, even when like somebody from NXT came in, it was like, I don't know how they're gonna, like, initially you don't know how like this is gonna go or what have you. You might have that feeling of being like, oh man, they've been kind of like, this kind of has been the trend, but like you haven't really like put enough jeopardy in there for me to be like, oh man, Leon's gonna lose or whatever, or make me believe it. So it's like, I can't sit here and believe it. I just cannot sit here and believe, like, what the story that you've told me and that I have seen over the couple of weeks that this has been advertised or whatever, or that we knew that we were going to do this. They didn't have like really one promo together in the ring, and they never really had a match against each other before that or anything like that in TNA, or we didn't get to see it. So it was like, okay, this is who's facing Leon. Okay, all right, whatever. Then there's no like real build up to it. It's just like, oh, okay, so I guess we're meant to be worried because like everyone from, or almost everyone from NXT has been stealing our titles. So like that's the story, I guess. That's about it. Like, you've got to read the fine print that you've already kind of read, kind of thing, without us having to tell you like the story that is already kind of out there, kind of thing, you know. So yeah, what a story. Like, you know, like that's not a story. Like, even if it is something that's in the fans' minds somewhat or what have you, you know, like, even if you say don't treat the fans like they're dumb, they know like the conditions that they're in or what have you. Absolutely, they do, and that's how they, you know, understood what the sum of what of the story was, you know. But you also need to explain it to the fans. You know, you need to put everything in jeopardy. You know, like there wasn't very much of that. There was a little bit of it, but there wasn't nearly enough. Like, there wasn't enough like time spent on going, what if Leon loses, what if, you know, like da 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 da, and that sort of thing. You needed a lot more of like, and again, you needed to show that Leon basically lost to Javon in different circumstances or whatever it was, like, or whatever, so that then there's more like, oh my god, he lost in this tag team match to him. Oh no, you know, now it's looking worse because like Javon pinned him and whatnot, you know. So obviously, you know, like obviously that's the thing of being like, oh, you know, I pinned you, so now I'm obviously not going to pin you at the show. But again, it's like again, where they were like, WWE were like, well, we're gonna have this guy in a match with your guy, but we're not gonna let him out before that, so he's not gonna ever be on your TV or what have you, up to that point. So it's like, oh, okay, so I've got to watch NXT to actually follow somewhat of this story. Sorry, no, I'm not interested. So that's even less like story that I'm gonna get for what you're trying to tell me. So yes, there is time that it helps and whatnot, but there's so much time that it's like it doesn't help, because like I'm not going to tune in to NXT, and a lot of people aren't going to tune in to NXT, you know. So especially from TNA, like not a huge percentage of them will. Like, realistically, if they were gonna tune into to NXT, they would have done so already, or would be doing so already. You know, maybe somebody would watch a clip or something like that, but that's gonna be about it. You know, whereas people who are watching NXT and see TNA stuff, I think there's more like, oh, well, maybe we'll check out TNA and what's happening with TNA, because one of our guys is over there in some ways, because it's the big event coming up and they're going, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll tune in to see that. So, but yeah. No, I think like besides story and actual like card positioning, there isn't much that you can do besides, like, again, as I said, wins and losses. But you've got, like I said, you've got to give people major storylines in the mid card. You've got to give several people major stories. Like, why, like, again, like Leon had a major story going on for like 6 months or whatever it was. But as I just said, right now, he doesn't really have that big of a story. Mostly, yes, because he's captured the title. He's done the thing that he's was like trying to do for months and months and months. So now you've got to have like people who are in that division, which again, you need more people in that division, but you need challengers for him. You need things for him to go up against. There's nothing compelling going on there. There isn't a light. Well, in this case, I would say a darkness on the horizon, so to speak. There's no one in that division, so it's like, besides Leon and maybe like a handful of people that are float in and float out, like again. So it's like, well, how can people be invested in what's happening now with this mid-card title or whatever, because there's nothing happening there. Same with Macklin. It's like, cool, you have this guy there who's, this tough guy or whatever and whatnot, but there's nothing for him to fight against. So it's like, well, what's he doing there? Like, type thing. And that's what I mean. Like sometimes the mid-card titles or whatever feel superfluous because you're not, like, they aren't your main focus. So it's really hard. It's a lot harder to and it's a lot harder to divide up your roster kind of thing, to say, okay, how many people are going to be in this quote-unquote mid-card division for this title? How many people are going to be devoted to fighting for this? Well, again, you've got so many other like avenues. You've got the X division, you've got the international title, besides just the world heavyweight title or what have you. You've got then the tag team scene, so you've got all these things. The more things, the more divisions, the more like split up things are, the more or less or whatever you have to sort of focus in on those things. And sorry, coughing there. Dry in here. But anyway, yes. So you've got to have that. You, like, again, the main event scene or what have you is the scene that most people care about or what have you, like the Hardys last table thing. Though they were in the mid-card or are in the mid-card or what have you, they had a main event feud, in a sense. Like, there wasn't much to that main event feud, but it was a main event feud. It was a big-time feud. A lot of people were invested in it because history, legacy, member berries, all that stuff, what have you. That's why people were invested. This is the last time, a lot like the John Cena stuff that we're seeing now, a lot of the same stuff with a lot of people who have retired in the last whatever few years or what have you. And even more people, like, you're going to see Jericho retire. I think somebody said that Edge had recently retired as well. So I think that's due to injury and whatnot, but whatever. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that if that's wrong. But the best of luck to whomever and anyone in that position, because again, it's a difficult thing, and I know this is a drug, man. Um, I've talked a little bit about JDC retiring next year. I don't know how it's going to go for him, but I wish him the best of luck. Like that's you see, these guys like Flair and whatnot, and Sting and whatnot, who are like going and going and going and going. It's like, and the Undertaker and things like that. There's sometimes like other motivations, besides like the thrill of it, or that sort of thing of this drug that you're chasing, of the high of professional wrestling, as they sort of say. But like, you're trying to get to that point of, saying, that's it, time to unlace these boots for the last time. I'm happy, and we rounded out our career in the right story, or in the right way, or with the right sort of thing. Was it the best thing ever? Maybe not, but did we go out of our way to try to make it a 10? No, but like sometimes the more you try to go out of your way to make something a 10, the further you will fall short, type thing. So knowing, hey, okay, it is what it is. We're only going to be able to go out there and do a few things, especially, well. So keep it short, keep it simple, sort of thing. And let's just get through doing the things that we need to do. But let's make sure that everything hits emotionally and connects and that sort of thing. So those are the sorts of things that you can kind of see in that. But again, that's the right now, like, same with WWE, same with AEW. I'm not just, and I'm trying to go through and say, hey, here's something that we could think about, or whatever. This is the solutions, not just saying, oh, this is crap and this sucks or whatever. No, let's look at where we're at. Let's figure out, like, some of these guys, or let's, like, finally, start to, we've got to spend some money. We've got to bring in more talent, more indie talent, so that even if it's a one-off or a two-off or a six-off or whatever it is, if it's for 6 months or whatever it is, or what have you, we've got to bring in more people, or we've got to focus in on some more of these people in some more of these combinations. So what are we going to do with the Rascals? Well, maybe we can have Dez go for the X Division title. There's something, even if that's, a short-term thing, at least it's something. Or are you going to say, okay, two of them are going to be in the tag team scene exclusively, or what have you, or mostly exclusively. And then the other two are going to do other stuff, or they're going to be in the X Division, or whatever. Like, or one of them is going to be in the X Division, and the other one's going to be in the international title division, or in the international title scene. Or one of them's going to be in the world title picture, or what have you. You know what I mean? Like, same sort of thing. Or you start saying, okay, we're going to place one of them in this division for now, and then the other one is going to be in, another division, or what have you. And then they're going to rotate. They're all going to rotate throughout the divisions, especially the mid-card divisions, because those are the divisions that need the most bolstering, and that you can use the most of these guys in rotation to sort of keep everything else moving freshly and entertaining, and not just like stagnating. Yes, it will stagnate after a while in some ways, because you've got the same four guys, interlocking and interchanging throughout, the divisions and whatnot, and you can only do that so many times, and them not win or them not, get to the next step or the next stage. But elevation is important with guys like that, and like maybe they're like happy where they're at or what have you, but at a certain point, again, you need to be like, well, we need one of you to sort of either be a leader and step up to that position because we just need somebody in that position and whatnot. So we need that person to pull their finger out and do it so that we've got somebody in that position. So you're not really going to be the focus, but you're going to be, in that picture just for a little while, just because we need somebody in that position, and we need somebody for this person to beat. We need, like, you're not one of the top guys, but we want to start experimenting with you or seeing, down the line if we could use you in that main event scene, or whether fans would warm to you in that position. Not just saying, hey, we need you to take a loss because Frankie Kazarian needs a win, or because Eric Young needs a win, or because such and such needs a win, but because we also want to see you in that upper card scene. So you've got to push people into those positions, into those stories again. And you need a faction for them to go, or a faction for them to go up against. Have them go up against Order 4 or something. There's another thing for them to do. So when you've got factions, you've kind of either got to have them go up against other factions, and that's kind of the difficulty, because it's like there shouldn't be too many other factions. There should only be like the forced faction of the baby faces kind of thing, that they all have to come together to finally depose the evil heel, faction or what have you. So that they can all get kind of what they want. But yeah, no, like, again, it all depends on the time that you give to these things, not just the story that you give to these things, because you could write the best story in the world, but if none of it gets seen or none of it is shown to the audience, or at least the majority of the audience, then we're left blind. We're left going, what is the story? Because you haven't spent enough time showing us the story. You've spent so much time with these other parts of something else, but yet this other part hasn't really gotten enough focus, or haven't got enough time, or haven't, and that's why I say again, everything, like, it's tough to make everything in a show work, because you've got to balance out all these things that are promos and trying to, weigh them out with some matches that are TV worthy, but not, pay-per-view worthy, but are leading to something and somewhere and some point. That's why when I said the upcoming tag team match with Kazarian and whatnot, and all of that was like, that's a TV match, but, and it's not pay-per-view worthy, but, like, the story going in was actually pretty good in some ways. Like, I know some people, didn't love that or whatever, but I think it's actually kind of good, because this is actually kind of a good position to be in. Like, again, there's so many people that are on that roster that are great baby faces. But there's not that many really great heels. Moose was a great heel for a while. And I almost think, again, like, Mustafa Ali's a great heel. You need more great heels. And, like EY is a great heel, but it's like that, like, again, that dude is, like, on the verge of retiring. Like, it has got to be. Like, so it's like, you've got to think, like, this is one of his last things that he's gonna do, or close to it. Again, he shouldn't be the focus. He should just be the vessel to get other people over. Same with Kazarian. He's the vessel to now get other people over. That's why you've got to push some of these younger stars with some stories or what have you, even if it's a small story or whatever it is, against Kazarian, so that eventually those younger stars can, and like you've got one there for Macklin. He's still, like, I think Kazarian still owed a title rematch against Macklin. So he could be like, well, I'm going to hold both belts, like type thing or whatever. Or you can be like Macklin trying to get a shot at Kazarian, because now you've kind of like you've kind of had them in the same match together again, so they're still in the same story, and you kind of pushed Macklin recently into that main event picture along with the champion, because he was just in a program with the guy. So now it's like, okay, and he just lost to Macklin. So it's like he's seemingly still in that mix of like he could be pushed up into that main event scene at some point. Like, but is the title that he's holding valuable? Like, it doesn't have a lot of history behind it. Like the DMC, that, like, when that first started, it didn't have a lot of history behind it. And this title's really just started. So it's like in the awkward early phases of that title. Realistically, what you kind of need to do is sync it up with a lot of the old titles so that it has a lineage going back, way, way, way back and whatnot, so that you have more of a history to kind of like give it more of a proper lineage or whatever, or a proper, history, or a proper, legacy, a proper like value in some way. So, or you need to say, okay, we're going to reactivate these other titles that we tried to get off the ground but never got off the ground, because, like, again, if you're not going to have, like, could be a title that doesn't quite get off the ground. Like the DMC kind of got off the ground, but then it kind of was starting to fizzle out. Like, I don't know whether it would have kept going had a PCO dropped the belt, because it's hard to say, because you never know until you never go type thing. You never know what would have happened, because, like, would Mace Warner have come into the company and beat PCO? I think, was that the idea? I'm not sure whether that was the idea or not. I'm not sure who was going to actually beat PCO for the title. Maybe that was the idea. I'm not too sure. Maybe Callahan was going to beat him. I don't know. Or something like that. And then you were going to bring Mace Warner in, or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's very tough for me to say what you would have done in that situation. But the way it kind of came together, and then you, like, I think, like, also, like, the length of time that it was like, we don't know what's going on with this title and whatnot, was too long. It should have been like, all right, this title, it's being vacated and whatever, and it's going to be up for grabs later on down the line. That, or, again, we're going to introduce a new title. We're going in a completely new direction, or we're going to reactivate a bunch of the old titles, and, like, the amalgamation of those titles is going to become a new title that is going to reflect the history of all of them, and this one, and be a new title, and it's going to be the international title, or that's what it's going to be called. So that would be like your idea of like building the belt. It already has all this lineage, all this history, all this stuff, all this prestige, everything else behind it. So, and now we're going to have it on the line at, and have all these tournaments and have all this stuff going on. And we're also going to give each participant a story reason for wanting to get to that belt. Some are going to be stronger than others. We're going to focus a bit more on others. We're going to give a little bit more time because we know, hey, we really want to invest in you, or we really see something in you, or whatever else it is. So that's where you've got to be. You've got to be focused on everything that you're doing and juggling all the balls. So, like I say, it's really tough because realistically, each month or whatever, you've got to be like going, okay, we already have to have challenges, 6 or 7 or several other challenges for every single title. They can't all happen at the same time. Well, they could, but it's like a really difficult thing for them to happen all at the same time, mostly. So saying, okay, who are we going to prioritize first, second, third, whatever. Well, for your more minor shows, like, again, the more minor people can go into those positions. Because, again, you're saying, hey, you don't need to carry the whole weight of having to draw a big pay-per-view. Don't worry about it. Like, it is what it is. These pay-per-views don't sell very well as it is. So don't worry if it's down a little bit, up a bit, whatever. Like, if it's up a bit, that's great, but whatever. Like, that's still good, but it's not like, we're gonna, celebrate too hard. Like, we're not gonna, it's business as usual. That's great, cool, let's keep going, because we've got other shows down the road, but maybe we'll get back to you because, like, especially if you did really well, or if, like, your t-shirt numbers are insane, or something like that, your merch sales suddenly start spiking, or things like that. It's like, oh, okay, cool, people really did warm to this kid. We don't really think that they're quite ready or quite in the right position yet, so we might give them a bit more of a story next time and start building them up over the next 6 months. So those are the sorts of things that they've got to look out for. But I think it's really tough because I think a lot of fans, it's a sort of a reciprocal sort of thing. Fans get as invested as they do as what the company, invests in them. And the company invests as much as they do in somebody by how much the fans get invested in somebody. So, yeah, it's sort of a tough situation sometimes to see the forest for the trees, so to speak. It's one of those things of, like, having to have your cake and eat it too, I suppose, or what have you. So, yeah, to elevate the division and elevate people within the division are really two separate things. You can't elevate a mid-card division. You can elevate the title or the titles, what have you, whatever, but you can't elevate them all. You know what I mean? You can maybe, okay, this month, like at Genesis, not at Genesis, at Bound for Glory, rather, sorry. At Genesis, they lifted up the tag team titles, and I think at Slammiversary and Bound for Glory last year, they elevated those titles up quite a bit. They were the main events and semi-main events, respectively, of most of those shows. So, again, they have pushed those titles, and they have put them on a legendary team that, you know, people want to see. And so when's that ride coming to an end? We don't know, or whatever. It must be soon, but when? We don't know. I'm thinking near the end of the year, or maybe early next year. We'll wait and see, but we will find out at some point, I am sure. So yeah, no, you like the division itself is what it is. Like, you can't elevate all of it at once. Like, so I think last month when Leon and Myron main evented the pay-per-view, they elevated the X Division title then. They also have done it a couple other times when Mustafa challenged for it against Chris Sabin in the last few years. I'm not trying to go back all the way to 2005 or whatever. I'm just saying in the last maybe 5 years or so. Also, there's been a bunch of times, so I don't want to go through them all. I'm gonna miss some, so sorry if I do miss some. But also, they had that whole pay-per-view about the new international title, and they've given Steve Macklin and that title some, good things here and there. Actually, the Frankie Kazarian story and the Frankie Kazarian feud was pretty all right, but it was I think it wasn't, I didn't really think that it was quite set to the point where it was this feels like Kazarian's gonna win it at any point. There needed to be more jeopardy, and it needed to be more yes, a surprise win is kind of cool in some ways, but usually a surprise win is only cool if it's a babyface. You don't really want surprise wins that much when it's a heel. People don't want to see the heel surprisingly win it that much. Heels win things underhandedly, so that's surprising in some ways or what have you, but you've still got to build them up and make them feel like, holy shit, maybe they're gonna beat them. They've that's why did you have Jake something line with Kazarian? You should have had them beating up Macklin all over the place and whatnot, and all of these things and whatnot, and making Macklin's life a living hell and whatnot, and all of this stuff. And then finally, you have Macklin lose the title. So all that jeopardy for weeks and whatever else it is, finally gets beat, and then Kazarian wins the title or whatever it is. And then you go from there, and again, the win back, or the way back, or the redemption of it was I don't think well thought out enough, and it wasn't built up enough. It was the next month, so it was you've just turned around and hot potatoed the title. Perhaps that's what the plan was in this regard, and again, you're trying to elevate the person in that division and the title kind of at the same time, by saying, okay, we're going to have him lose to Kazarian, but then we're going to have him beat Kazarian, but then we're going to have Kazarian win the world title, so that then we can put him back into that main event scene and go from there, type thing. So that, I think that was kind of the idea in some regard, or some part of the idea, or at least I hope it was, or at least that's what I'm trying to read into things. I'm trying to be yeah, they definitely planned this out or whatever, or at least they were teasing the waters with this or what have you. And maybe there was a decision made by somebody who was this would work out. But yeah, no, I think you always need to have that level of investment in the fans. You need to get the fans invested. Not just the wrestler, but the people who are what is our feud for this division? Why is this our feud for this division? How are we building wrestlers in this division. What are we doing with them? Because you can't just keep somebody being the X Division guy or the tag team person or whatever, the international guy or whatever it is. Like the Hardys are a bit of a different story to some extent, or a tag team that is a main event like level tag team. Like if you could find a New Age Road Warriors or whatever, a New Age Outlaws, which is a bit weird because it's the New Age Outlaws, I guess. Whatever. You know what I mean? A new team, a new Edge and Christian, a new, Dudley Boys or whatever it is. A new Motor City Machine Guns, a new Beer Money, whatever it is. You've got to find those things that are okay. This is a tag team. They're going to be major. We're going to use them as a tag team and keep them as a major attraction for however long, whatever. That's it. That's what they do. This is who they are. This is the team that we're going to build around or what have you. And it's easier when it is an already established thing. But like, this is one thing that you do. You've got to keep things, fresh and interesting. People will lose interest the longer things go along that are the same. People do like, quote unquote, the things that they member berries. But again, you've got to give them something new and interesting to hook them into as well and whatnot. So that's why they did the Broken Hardys, because it was like, this is new, this is different, this is innovative, this is refreshing an old act. Yes, that old act is still popular, but it's starting to wane. And if we add this extra dimension, or we at least try to add, this extra dimension or this new thing, then at least, like, even if it fails, we've tried something new and we've, put this fresh coat of paint on it in some regards. So now it's like, new perspective or whatever, or a new way to look at things or what have you. So then finally you can go back and say, okay, cool, right, now we're going to have the Broken Hardys in a different position. They're going to go up against DK. We're going to have this new team, DK. And they're going to be like spooky wooky or whatever and whatnot. And you're going to have Abyss, who's, a very established TNA guy. Plus this new guy, Crazy Steve. And this chick who's a bit loopy and also a new girl. And then she's going to also become Knockouts champion very quickly as well. So you're establishing that group, kind of thing as being like, holy crap, we need to pay attention to these guys because they've got a TNA icon in Abyss and two new people. And one of those two new people is the new Knockouts champion, and the other one just won the tag team titles along with Abyss. Plus he's a blind crazy guy or whatever. And they have this crazy gimmick and whatnot, and this crazy entrance and all of this stuff and whatnot, and this crazy look and whatnot. And it goes really well with the Broken Hardys trying to delete and whatnot and whatever. They're, sort of similar but not the same, sort of thing. And then you have the Wolves, so again, I wasn't really watching around that time, but you know what I mean? Like, you have these things all kind of coming together. You have this young, sort of fairly young, like, duo that are a very good duo, and they work well and whatnot, and know what they're doing and whatnot, and all of this sort of stuff. So, and then they go out there and just have banger after banger after banger. Like, that's the thing. Like, and then they also win the title. So it's like, each of the, like, not just to hot potato the title, but to be like, okay, we've got to establish all these teams as being like in the hunt, in the race. Any of these ones could win the belt, at any time, and they're well and truly worthy of winning those belts. They're not just placeholder people or what have you, or whatever. That's the one problem with placeholder champions and things like that. Like the Laredo Kid, he was a placeholder champion. He was a transitional champion. He was there so that you could get the belt from one guy to another guy. You playing hot potato with that title, but you could have done it in probably 1,000 other ways. You could have done it in a multi-man match. That would have worked. Again, you could have had option C then and had them vacate the title, and then you could have had a tournament or a match or whatever for somebody to win it. So again, I do think the vacation of the title does somewhat hurt things, because it's especially when somebody's been so dominant in a division and whatnot, that it does feel like, well, there's not much left to do, kind of thing. That it's well, yeah, who's going to fill that void? Who's going to step up or whatever? But especially when you're considering this person's just beat everyone, it's yeah, well, who else is here type thing, So you can't forget that you need to reestablish people and be okay, where are we at with whomever we're going to put in that position? So, but yeah, no, I think as well, the fandom is a part of their own demise in some regards, because they can't get invested either. But yes, the company certainly needs to work on those things. So those are just some of my thoughts in this area, and I hope that we can find more ways and more things that get people more invested in those divisions. I don't know whether, as I said, it's the best idea or the worst idea. It could be, again, a bit controversial or whatever, but the overlying idea of just make things more interesting and bring more people in and give more people more stories, I think, is just undeniable, and that will always work no matter what you're looking at, whether that's the world title or the mid-card titles or whatever, or even a mid-card feud or an upper main event feud or a main event feud. It's always going to have that kind of feeling of this is what we need to do and this is how we need to do it, or what have you, so that people are still invested in these other things. Because you can't just have the people be invested in the, if your opening card match through to your semi-main event, everyone's sitting on their hands, no one gives a shit, you've got a problem. Because when you go ahead and push somebody out of that mid-card, perpetual mid-card sort of position into the main event, then it's well, why should they care? Because this person's just been a mid-carder and now they're going to go back to being a mid-carder again after this. So that's where your problems do begin. But that is for the more, if that's for the more minor shows, and it is that grooming sort of moment of no, we want to see how the audience reacts or how the audience feels about this or whatever, that sort of thing. It is that's an experiment we want to take, or we want to keep investing in this person and really say, no, we want to see if people do care. We're going to bring them back in a few months' time for another opportunity or whatever it is. So again, those are the things that you've got to keep trying and they've got to keep trying and working out on. But anyway, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this one, and I hope you'll join me again in another one.